Austin, we appreciate the time as always, and the week has come. David Sanders Jr. week is here. We are 3 days away from the anticipated announcement of the five-star offensive lineman.
Yeah, it's been a long process. I think it's been long for David and his family. I think they had their plan. They stuck to their plan, and excited for Saturday. And, it's one of those things where when you took the visits in July, those are wrapped up, and then you realize, man, I got to make it like 24 more days. That means everybody involved had to make it 24 more days, and we're just a couple of days away. So we've almost made it. Saturday, a little after 1 Eastern, David Sanders will announce his decision. And, I've said for a long time, when others were saying Ohio State or Clemson or whatever else, that I felt like Tennessee was in a really good spot here. Continue to feel that way. Tennessee has done a really good job. He feels really comfortable with Glenn Ellerby and Josh Heupel and the offense, and loves George McIntyre. And so, those other schools are going to continue to swing here all till December. But we'll all find out on Saturday what David Sanders is going to do. But I like where Tennessee's at.
Austin, Josh Ward just pulled a Jerry Garantano. We wasn't supposed to ask you about David Sanders because we know how fatigued you are getting asked about David Sanders, and he just goes on first question and asks you about David Sanders. Man,
I saw an opportunity.
How's Jerry Garantano like by you? Disappointed, man. Disappointed.
I just roll with it. I've been asked about him several times. I kind of give my static answer because at this point, I don't know what else to say.
Have you been out and about in Knoxville and someone stopped you and said, "Hey, you're Austin Price, right? You think we got a good chance with David Sanders Jr.?" Has that happened?
Since he visited here in July, I have been at Home Depot, Chick-fil-A, and then out to dinner with my wife at another establishment. And each time, you can just see it coming. I was at Chick-fil-A, and I could see this older couple, and I could see them staring at me. And as they made their way to the door, I was sitting there with my kids, and they're like, "Hey, David Sanders coming?" I'm like, we'll find out on the 17th.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that makes me so happy.
That's great. That's great. Austin Price, Volquest.com here with us. Football, on the football field with these guys. I mean, what's the star position battle looking like with a couple days left until the first game of the season?
Well, I mean, it certainly feels like Christian Harrison right now would be, if the Vols had a game today, he would have a real shot to be Tennessee's starting nickel. Boo Carter's right there as well. I think it's a two-man race. I think they're both going to play. Who starts, to me, is irrelevant. It's who plays the most, who finishes the game. In a lot of ways that matters. So it's kind of like who starts a tight end. If Miles Kitselman may start, but Ethan Davis may play more, or it may be Ethan Davis that starts and Holden Stays plays more. I mean, again, I think it just boils down to time and place and where you're at on the field and all that stuff. You have to account for when you're talking about coaching decisions of players. And so, again, right now, the game started right this minute. I'd probably take Christian Harrison to be Tennessee's starting nickel, but I think Boo Carter's absolutely going to play a bunch. And, I think it'll be up to both those kids to prove that they need to stay on the field.
We're talking to Austin Price, VolQuest.com. Another individual position that has had a battle and question of who will be the guy. What's that look like this season is left guard. What do you think right now? Is this a conversation we might be having for several weeks into the season?
I think it really may be, Josh. I would have told you going into fall camp that Andre Carrick was probably where this staff was going to go, but Andre's not stayed out on the field a whole lot. He's been dinged up, and until he proves he can stay out there, I think this is a big scrimmage for him coming up tomorrow. He's got to stay out there on the field. Otherwise, I would take Jackson Lampley to be Tennessee's starting left guard against Chattanooga and until proven otherwise. So, I don't think the decision's been made. I don't think that the competition is over by any stretch of the imagination, which is why I think this drags on, as you said. But for Carrick, he's got to prove he can stay out there, and to this point, he's not been able to do it.
Will Brooks looks like he is the starter at safety. When people see that he as a former walk-on, they may have their opinions about the rest of the competition, fair or unfair. How did Will Brooks put himself in this position to be the starter first game of the season?
Well, I mean, you go back to last year, Jason, and when they had some players get hurt, or get dinged up and not be able to go, he was out there a lot at star at the back end of the season, and he's somebody that Tim Banks trusts a lot, and I think for right now nobody's really separated, and when no one separates, coaches are always going to lean on the guy that's going to be in the right place, period. Like, these other players have got to learn to separate from Will Brooks to get past it. Like, once they do that, I think it's over, right? Like, once you learn to separate, it becomes yours. But if it's apples to apples, coaches are always going to lean to the guy that they trust from a standpoint of, like, knowing where to be, where to line up, someone who can help, other players out on the field. And right now that is Will Brooks. So if the game started right now, it would be Will Brooks at safety, in my opinion. Now, Jacoby Thomas has got a chance to see if he can separate and get past him over the next, week and a half. Tomorrow's scrimmage will be big for number 9, just like it's big for John Slaughter, and it's big for, some of those other safeties. So for Tennessee, they want to continue to, see that competition, build up and build up. They don't want it just to be a lay down for Will Brooks. They want Will Brooks to be pushed, because that means these other players are really starting to turn the corner.
How deep do you think the confidence is at cornerback, where they brought in a couple of transfers, Jermon McCoy, who's going to start, came in from Morgan State, Jalen McMurray transferred in, plus some young talent. How deep is the confidence right now at corner?
Well, it's really high. I mean, Ricky Gibson has got a little bit of a tender hamstring. Don't expect him to go tomorrow. Would expect him to, absolutely, nurse him all the way up till kickoff against Chattanooga, because it just doesn't help you to have him out there. You want to get him healthy, especially with hamstrings. They have a tendency to flare back up. But they love Ricky. They love Jermon McCoy. Those are their 1-2 punch at corner. And then after that, it's Jalen McMurray, it's Jordan Matthews, it's William Wright, Caleb Beasley. So they really like their front end starters at corner. A little bit less experience behind that, but they really like the makeup and the size. I mean, you look at Ricky Gibson is a longer corner, so to speak. Jermon McCoy, a longer corner. Jordan Matthews, longer corner. Caleb Beasley, longer corner. Now, not as much with Will Wright or Jalen McMurray. They're more your traditional corner. But Tennessee's got some versatility there on the edge of the back end of the defense.
I saw where Cooper Mays was taken out a little bit later in the scrimmage. Do you see that happening again in the second scrimmage? And if so, how does that affect, a guy like Andrew Kerr, who's trying to compete and solidify that left guard position? It sure would help to have the starting center right next to you during the scrimmage too.
Yeah, but you got to keep Cooper. I mean, at the end of the day, like, Cooper's health is just like Keenan Peely or Lance Hurd or John Campbell. I mean, just some of these players, there's a significant fall off if you move on from the starter. So I think, honestly, I wouldn't play Cooper one snap tomorrow, but that's me. The coaches get paid a lot of money to make other decisions. I just know how important he is to the success of the season. We saw it last year, and Ollie Lane filled in admirably. I mean, the guy had never really played center, and all of a sudden he's forced over there and really held his own. But when he was able to slide back to left guard and Cooper was the center, the offense moved just a little bit better. And so it will be interesting to kind of see how a lot of that, transpires and works. But I would bet he plays some tomorrow, but doesn't play a ton.
If they need somebody else at center, which obviously they hope to not need, who is that right now?
I think the emergency would be Dane Davis. I would be shocked if it wasn't Dane. Like, if the game's going on right now and Cooper has to come out, I think it's Dane Davis. I just think that's the logical selection. It's where the coaches are going to feel most comfortable. I don't think they're comfortable enough with Bison Lang or William Satterwhite or Jesse Perry or any of these players that have been repping at center. But they've got to figure out a way to get comfortable because at the end of the day, Cooper Mays will not be here come January, and so there is an expiration date on his career, and it expires whenever Tennessee season is over. So they've got to find a way to figure out who their center of the future is going to be. They've been really fortunate to have him for all 4 years of Josh Heupel's tenure here. I don't think that can be stated enough. And so, they've got to figure out who's behind him. William Satterwhite's one that comes to mind. Jesse Perry's another one who I think athletically, even though he's a bigger guy, athletically could really hold up in the interior and flourish in there.
Austin, last thing out the door, anything we might have missed on David Sanders Jr. ahead of his announcement on Saturday?
No. I would expect him to have some type of fancy suit on. I expect him to have a little bit of fun with the announcement, and Volquest will be there for the David Sanders Jr. Day announcement shortly after 1 o'clock on Saturday.
Did you say Volquest will be there?
Volquest will be there, yes. Okay. I will be on hand.
How many of Volquest's guys will be there?
2.
Okay.
Thank you.
A good follow-up question.
Why? Does it really matter how many are there?
Yeah. I think it matters.
Swain wants to know how many hands are on deck.
Yeah.
For the anticipated announcement.
Right. Will Austin Price be there?
Austin Price will be there. With a guy like David Sanders Jr., it's always all hands on deck.
That's right.
That's the kind of coverage you'll get. You can read about what's happening with Tennessee football, see and hear about Tennessee football as well with all the work they're doing, Volquest.com, and coverage of David Sanders Jr. and all other key targets for Tennessee on the recruiting trail as it's been a big summer in recruiting. Volquest.com is the website. Austin, we appreciate the time as always. Safe travels this upcoming weekend, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Guys, if you hadn't asked me about him today, I was going to offer him up for next week's show, but Josh just couldn't abide by the rules.
I know, man. The game plan was not to ask you, but of course he want to go Jared Garantano on us and try to take the ball in himself for the touchdown.
Look at the result once again of doing that.
It's all right.
Yep.
Thanks, guys. Have a good afternoon.
We appreciate you. Austin Price joining us on the Stanley Fencing and Gates Hotline.